incredible sense of what is possible and how to push the spectrum and reset our imaginations. And we got that from a great leader right here from New York City. My pleasure to introduce Congress member Alexandria Ocasio Cortez.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Comptroller. Thank you both for your extraordinary commitment on this issue and on climate. On the way over here, I was telling folks that we have a major climate announcement that is incoming and that it's actually good for once. Coming and having to do a lot of our work in Washington, D.C. often means that we see a lot of depressing news, especially with what's going on with ongoing reconciliation and budget negotiations. We're seeing the constant influence of big oil and dark money in lowering our national national aspirations in addressing the climate crisis. And so that can often get people down and make people feel cynical and frankly quite scared about the future for our city, our country, and our world. But today's announcement, I think, really shows that a lot of the action, and I would argue the bulk of climate action in this country is not happening in Washington, it's happening in New York City, and it's happening at state and local levels across the country. You had mentioned 2 years ago when we had rolled out the Green New Deal, one of the exciting things about the impact of introducing the Green New Deal resolution was its adoption at city, state, and municipal levels across the country. New York City, Austin, Texas, Los Angeles, the state of Maine, as well as many other areas have either brought a Green New Deal resolution to a vote or have passed it outright. And what today's announcement really indicates is a next level in our ability to combat the climate crisis. And that is essentially a full divestment from fossil fuels from our public pension funds. And in New York City alone, this divestment can amount to over $50 billion, is that right?
$50 billion in investment in renewables.
And having that shift, divesting from fossil fuels and then investing to renewable energy and climate infrastructure is exactly what we need to be doing in this moment in order to tackle the climate crisis. As one of the New York City members that sit on the Financial Services Committee, one of the things that I often see firsthand is how a lot of dark money, private equity, and Wall Street interests will offset some of their riskiest investments and least popular investments into public pension funds, which often sets up our public pension funds for crisis. And fossil fuels is a major element of that. Offsetting fossil fuel investments are becoming less and less popular by the day, and people don't want to invest in them. So a lot of these groups have been offsetting those investments into public pension funds. With New York City divesting our public pension funds so that teachers and city workers can feel confident that their public pensions and that their investments are not contributing towards the climate crisis, but are actually contributing towards climate solutions, we're setting a model for the rest of the world. And so from here in New York City to Washington to across the country, I want us to celebrate this decision. It is a major structural change in our energy investment, and I think we should challenge other cities, states, and countries to do the same. Because divesting, using our public investments to divest from the fossil fuel industry is going to be one of the critical tipping points in making sure that we have the structural investments necessary to transition to renewable and clean energy.
Congressmember, thank you. And I got to tell you again, first of all, thank you so much for changing people's minds and resetting the entire sense of the possible with the Green New Deal. It is extraordinary. And a special thank you, of course, to Senator Markey as well. What you did changed the debate in this country permanently. And that's one of the highest callings I can imagine, to help people see a whole new reality. But I want to emphasize the point about people knowing their money is going someplace good. Because decisions are made about people's money without their involvement.
That's right.
And what I've tried to do, what the controllers tried to do, is right that wrong. Now, what we all have to do, including leaders on the national level like you, is help everyone understand they have a say. Union members have a say,
Yes.
Citizens have a say. If your state or your city or your county or your labor union is investing in fossil fuels, then that's not good for you. Mm-hmm. When you add up the impact of pension funds around the world, it's trillions. Mm-hmm. It's enough to create the solution.
Absolutely.
And so we need your very strong voice helping people realize what they can achieve.
Yeah, of course.
Can I just also say to you that as we struggled through the years to do divestment and green investment, there was a sea change with the Green New Deal. And when that came forward, it opened the door for discourse, for discussion. And so today is a city announcement, but it's really a national announcement that you spearheaded. And I just want to thank you on behalf of everyone in the city. I don't think we would be here today if you did not walk into the Capitol and say, we're going to change this. And I know we both feel that way.
Thank you both so much. That's incredibly kind and generous. And I think that as well, you know, we have the UN Climate Summit right around the corner. Yes. And we have leaders around the world, including President Biden, as well as many other delegates representing the United States. And the thing is that with the way that budget reconciliation is going in Washington, we cannot show up to Glasgow empty-handed. Mm-hmm. We simply cannot. And right now, dark money interests in Washington are trying to ensure that we do show up empty-handed, mm-hmm. and essentially sacrifice the United States leadership role globally in global reductions of climate emissions. And we will not allow that to happen, whether it's finding alternative ways. We will divest and we will transition the United States energy infrastructure and our economy to be more just and to be better prepared to transition our energy infrastructure for clean and renewable sources.
One more point, Congressmember, and what you said is so powerful, because there is a lot of money here trying to take us in the wrong direction. I appreciate that you always shine a light on that. But I want to use our example as a bit of a good antidote to that. We're in the financial capital of the world. There's lots of money, there's lots of power trying to stop these things from happening. But here's what we're saying today. We're committing to net zero emissions in all our investments. Mm-hmm. We're committing to $50 billion in new renewable investments and divestment from fossil fuels. That happened in the financial capital of the world. Mm-hmm. Now, those powerful money interests didn't like it, but they were powerless to stop it. Mm-hmm. So a phrase I like to use, which I think is resonant with a lot of what you believe, I always say, don't let anyone talk you out of your own power.
Yeah.
The people of this country have the ability to say to the leaders of their pension funds accountable to them, just stop. Mm-hmm. And that's more powerful than those moneyed interests. But we've got to sound the alarm. We've got to call people to the mission. And again, I know you can do that.
Yeah, and it's not an accident or coincidence whatsoever that this leadership is coming from worker-led pension funds.
Amen.
Worker-led public pension funds are leading the way in structural investments in clean and renewable energy. And that's not an accident. And I thank you both so much for prioritizing this.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Congressmember. Thank you, Comptroller. There is some good news in the world, mm-hmm. you know? And it means people need to get involved, stay involved, get even more deeply involved. And